Billionaire found his maid's daughter crying at his son's grave. What he discovered shocked everyone. He came to the grave expecting silence, haunted only by his own regret. Asterisk, a little girl stood before a lonely grave, her small frame shaking. As silent tears rolled down her cheeks, she was dressed in a faded blue dress, her hands trembling as they rested on the cold stone. Every morning she came here, and no one knew why. No one understood what secret tied her innocent heart to this forgotten resting place, and no one could imagine that behind her tears was a truth powerful enough to shake the life of the man who owned half the city. A truth hidden beneath years of silence, waiting to break free. Arthur Montgomery never expected to see anyone at his son's grave. He thought this place belonged to his regrets alone. He had lost Daniel 3 years ago, and since then Sundays were his punishment. He would walk the long path through the cemetery with his heavy steps, remembering every moment he had missed, every conversation he never had, every smile he never noticed. He believed grief was the only companion he had left, but today something was different. Something that made his breath stop halfway as he approached the familiar stone. He saw her, the little girl standing there, her head bowed, her shoulders trembling. She was too small, too fragile to be in a place like this alone. Arthur froze for a moment. Watching her from a distance, she looked like a lost butterfly caught in a storm. Her presence felt out of place, yet strangely connected to the quiet grief surrounding the grave. He wondered who she was, why she was crying, and why she looked as if she knew his son. Arthur slowly stepped closer, but the girl did not run. She simply stepped back, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. She did not speak, but her eyes held a deep sorrow much older than her age. Arthur knelt down so he would not scare her and asked gently, "Who are you, little one, and why are you crying?" Here the girl hesitated. She looked at the grave, then at Arthur, and whispered, "My name is Lily, and I came to see Uncle Daniel because I miss him." Arthur felt his heart stop. Daniel had never mentioned knowing a child. He had never brought anyone home. He had never spoken of this girl. The confusion washed over Arthur like a cold wave. He struggled to understand what she meant. How could she call Daniel her uncle? How could she possibly know him? He asked softly, "How did you know my son?" Lily lowered her eyes, and her voice trembled as she spoke. "He used to visit us every week. He helped my mom, he brought food, he fixed things in our house, and he always told me I was brave," he said. "I was like a little star shining in darkness. He was my hero." Arthur felt pain rise from a deep place inside him. He had not known this version of his son. He had never imagined Daniel spending time helping people, helping a maid, helping a little girl. He had never realized how much of Daniel he had missed. Lily kept speaking, her words fragile but filled with love. She said, "He told me that sometimes the kindest people hide the deepest pain." He smiled, but his eyes were sad. "I did not understand then." Arthur asked, "Who is your mother? What does she do?" Lily looked up with her tear-filled eyes and replied, "My mother's name is Rosa. She used to work in your house a long time ago, before she got sick." Arthur felt a shock run through him. He remembered Rosa. She had worked in their home for years, quietly, efficiently, with kindness that often went unnoticed, until one day she simply left without a word. Arthur never asked why. He never bothered to know her story. But now her daughter stood in front of him, revealing a connection to Daniel that Arthur could not comprehend. He asked, "Where's your father?" Lily whispered, "He is gone. He died in an accident years ago. It is only me and my mom now, and she is very sick, Uncle. Daniel helped us. He promised he would always be there, but he is gone too, so I came here today because I thought maybe he could hear me." Arthur felt an ache in his chest. He saw the sincerity in her eyes, the loneliness that surrounded her like a shadow. He felt something pull at his heart. Lily seemed too young to carry such a burden. Yet she stood there, brave yet broken, just as Daniel must have seen her. Arthur slowly took her hand, her small fingers cold and trembling. He said, "You do not have to come here alone. I am here." Now he looked at the grave and realized how little he had truly known about his son. Daniel had lived a life Arthur never saw. He had loved people Arthur never noticed. He had carried pain Arthur never shared. Arthur swallowed hard, wondering what else he did not know about his own child. He asked Lily, "Does your mother know you are here?" Lily shook her head. "No, she is very sick, and today she could not get up. She cried all night. She said everything is getting harder, and I got scared, so I came to talk to Uncle Daniel because he always made us feel." Arthur felt a sting of guilt. He had lived in mansions surrounded by servants, but never once thought about Rosa. After she left, he never thought about the struggles she might have faced. He never knew she was suffering now, and the only person who helped her was the son he had lost. Arthur looked at Lily again and saw Daniel in her sincerity, her kindness, her pain. It felt as if this small child carried a piece of Daniel with hers. He walked Lily toward his car. He felt a sudden shift inside him, a realization that this encounter was not random. It was the beginning of something, a revelation, a truth hidden behind years of distance and unspoken words, a truth that Daniel took to his grave, a truth that Arthur was now standing at the edge of without fully knowing how deeply it would change everything. The wind blew softly through the trees as Lily looked back at the grave one last time. Arthur placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, and together they walked toward a future neither of them expected, but both needed, without knowing that the secrets waiting ahead would shake the Montgomery legacy to its core. Arthur Montgomery held Lily's hand gently as they walked away from the grave, the weight of her small fingers pressed against his palm like a silent plea for safety and something within. Arthur shifted with every step he took. He felt the ache of years lived in blindness, years in which he failed to see his own son's heart, years in which he ignored the quiet suffering of people who had once been a part of his home. Lily sat quietly in the car, her eyes red, but her posture calm in a way that didn't suit a child her age, the kind of calmness that came only from carrying responsibilities far too heavy for such small shoulders. Arthur watched her from the corner of his eye as the car moved through the narrow roads outside the cemetery. She stared at her hands, twisting her fingers nervously, as if afraid of something, as if unsure if she had done the right thing by coming with. Arthur asked gently, "Lily, are you scared?" She hesitated, then nodded slightly, saying, "I do not want to be a problem. I just came to see Uncle Daniel because I was sad. I will go back home after this. I do not want anyone to get angry." Arthur felt a painful pull in his chest. The idea that she believed she could be a burden made him think of Daniel. How many times had Daniel felt the same? How many silent battles had he fought alone while Arthur was too busy building an empire? He looked at Lily and said softly, "You are not a problem, and no one will be angry, I promise." The car stopped outside a small neighborhood far from the luxury Arthur was accustomed to. The street was lined with old buildings, cracked walls, faded paint, and narrow staircases. Children played barefoot in the dust, and a woman selling fruit called out to passersby. This was the world Lily lived in, and for the first time Arthur realized how far it was from the mansion where he lived. Lily pointed to a small building with broken windows and a rusted railing. "That's my home," she whispered. Arthur felt a knot form in his stomach. He wondered how Rosa had survived here all these years, how she had raised a child alone in this place. Why no one ever helped her? How could he have been so unaware of the life of someone who once served his home so faithfully? They climbed the narrow stairs, and when Lily opened the door, Arthur saw a dimly lit room with a thin mattress on the floor, a wooden chair with one leg loosely tied, a small shelf with a handful of plates, and a small stove against the wall. Rosa lay on the mattress, her face pale, her breath shallow, her hands trembling. She looked much older than Arthur remembered, broken by time, illness, and hardship. Ali rushed to her mother and knelt beside her, whispering, "Mama, I brought someone. He wants to help." Rosa opened her eyes slowly, confusion filling her gaze until they landed on Arthur. Her breath caught in her throat. She struggled to sit up, her voice faint. "Mr. Montgomery, you should not be here." Arthur felt a wave of guilt. He had never visited any of his staff. After they left his home, he had never bothered to understand their lives. Now, standing in this small, crowded room, he felt the cold truth of his ignorance. He said softly, "Rosa, why did you never tell us you needed help? Why did you leave without saying?" Anything Rosa tried to speak, but her breath faltered. Lily held her hand tightly, whispering, "It's okay, Mama." Arthur stepped closer, kneeling beside her, and said, "Rosa, please, let me help you. Let me understand what happened, why Daniel was helping you. Why he never told me." Rosa swallowed hard, tears welling in her eyes. She looked at Arthur with a mixture of sorrow and hesitation, as if revealing the truth might break something fragile. Finally, in a trembling voice, she said, "Daniel was kind. He was gentle. He cared when no one else did. I did not want to bring my problems into your family. Life was hard after my husband died. People where we lived were unkind. I lost my job, I lost my home, and when Daniel saw us struggling, he started helping. Quietly, he said, 'Your father does not need to know.' He said he would handle everything himself. I did not want to burden anyone." Arthur felt the words strike him like blows. Daniel had been carrying responsibilities Arthur never knew about, gifts of kindness, sacrifices, and burdens that his own father failed to see. Rosa continued speaking, her voice fading. "Daniel said he did not want anyone to think we were using his position. He wanted to help with dignity. He said he wanted to protect Lily. He said she reminded him of someone he once failed." Arthur felt confusion. What did Daniel mean by someone he once failed? What wound was his son trying to heal? Rosa whispered, "He came every week. Sometimes he stayed for hours. He taught Lily to read. He fixed the pipes. He brought medicines. He said kindness is the only thing we leave behind when we are gone." I did not understand why his eyes always looked sad, but now I think he carried something heavy inside. Emily looked at Arthur with wide eyes, as if she hoped he understood. He gently placed his hand over hers and said, "Daniel was a better man than I ever realized." Rosa nodded slowly, tears slipping down her cheeks. She said, "He spoke of you often. He admired you. He wanted you to be proud. But he did not know how to tell you. He was afraid of disappointing you. He thought his choices, his mistakes, might hurt your name." Arthur felt something crack inside him. The memory of their last conversation came rushing back, filled with anger, words spoken in frustration, pride standing between them like an iron wall he had pushed Daniel away, thinking he was teaching him strength. But he had only built distance. Daniel had gone to help Rosa and Lily instead, and Arthur had never known. Rosa tried to sit up, coughing violently. Lily panicked, "Mama, breathe, please breathe." Arthur quickly helped her sit and realized how weak she really was. Fear rose within him. He said, "Lily, we need to take your mother to a hospital now." Lily nodded desperately. Clutching Rosa's hand, Arthur carried Rosa in his arms, her frail body light as a feather. Lily followed close behind her, small steps, quick and anxious. The neighbors watched in silence, confused and surprised, as the billionaire who owned half the city carried a sick woman down their old staircase. In that moment, Arthur Montgomery, who had never touched poverty in his life, faced it head on, and it changed him in ways he had never imagined. Car sped toward the hospital, and Lily held her mother's hand, whispering, "Please stay with me, Mama, please stay with me." Arthur sat beside them, feeling the weight of 3 intertwined lives. One lost, one breaking, one innocent, and a truth rising slowly to the surface, a truth Daniel had hidden, a truth Arthur would soon discover, and when he did, nothing in his world would remain the same. The hospital corridors were bright and cold, the kind of brightness that stung the eyes, and the kind of cold that slipped into the bones. Arthur carried Rosa through the entrance while Lily held tightly to his coat, her small fingers trembling as she tried to keep up her breath, shaky and uneven, every step filled with fear. Arthur felt the heavy weight of responsibility pressing against his chest for the first time in years. He felt helpless, yet determined to fight for someone who depended entirely on him. Nurses rushed toward them, placing Rosa on a stretcher and moving her through the double doors. Lily tried to follow, but a nurse gently stopped her, saying, "Sweetie, you cannot go inside right now." Lily froze, her eyes wide in panic. She looked up at Arthur, silently begging him to fix everything. He knelt down in front of her, took her shaking hands, and said, "I know you are scared, but your mother needs the doctors to help her, and they will do everything they can." She nodded slowly, though her tears continued to fall. Silently, Arthur guided her to the waiting area. Where small metal chairs were lined up against the wall, she sat down hugging her knees, her little body curled in fear. Her eyes on the door, her mind on her mother. Arthur sat beside her, unable to look away from her. He wondered how many nights she had cried alone, how many days she had faced hunger, how many moments she had wished for help but found none except Daniel. The thought of his son filled him with faith. Arthur sat him with a deep ache. He wished Daniel were here now. He wished he could ask him why he never spoke, why he never let Arthur see this part of his life, why he chose to hide everything when Arthur would have done anything to help. At least that's what he told himself, but deep inside he wondered if Daniel had truly believed that he would help, or if maybe Daniel feared his father's expectations more than his father. Lily whispered softly, "Do you think Mama will be okay?" Arthur placed his hand on her shoulder, saying, "I will do everything I can, I promise." Lily looked at him with eyes too old for her age, eyes that had seen pain far beyond her years. She said, "Mama always said Uncle Daniel was our angel, but now he is gone. Maybe angels leave when they get tired." Arthur felt his throat tighten. He whispered, "Daniel never got tired of helping people. He got tired of carrying his pain." Alone hours passed like days. The doctor finally walked toward them. Lily jumped to her feet. Arthur stood tall, bracing himself for news. The doctor said she is stable for now, but very weak. She needs medication, rest, and better living conditions, or she will get sick again. Arthur nodded. He would fix everything. He would not let her fall again. Lily asked softly, "Can I see her now?" The doctor nodded and guided them to a small room. Rosa lay on the bed, her eyes half open, her breathing slow but steady. Lily rushed to her side, holding her hand. Rosa smiled weakly, whispering, "My brave girl, you should not cry." Lily shook her head, trying to hold back her tears. Arthur stood at the foot of the bed, ashamed that he had never known how hard her life had become, ashamed that his son had fought this battle alone. Rosa looked at Arthur, her eyes filled with gratitude and guilt. She said softly, "Mr. Montgomery, I never meant for you to find out like this." Arthur shook his head, saying, "No, Rosa, you should have told me. I should have known you were suffering. You gave years of your life to our home, and we gave nothing back when you needed us." Rosa looked away, unable to meet his eyes. Lily watched them, silently sensing emotions, but not understanding their depth. Arthur stepped closer and said, "Rosa, tell me everything I need to know about Daniel. I need to understand why he helped you, why he kept it a secret, why he never spoke to me about each." Rosa closed her eyes for a moment as if gathering strength, then opened them slowly and said, "Daniel was a good man, but he was hurting in ways I did not understand. He came to me first when Lily was sick. He saw us struggling and he said he would help, but he made me promise not to tell anyone, especially you. I asked him why he refused to explain, but he said some secrets are better carried alone, and he said he did not want you to think he was irresponsible. He did not want you to think he was being taken advantage of. He said he already disappointed you too many times." Arthur felt his breath catch. He remembered the arguments with Daniel, the harsh words he used thinking he was teaching discipline. He remembered Daniel's quiet eyes filled with unspoken pain the nights he came home late, the mornings he left early, perhaps trying to avoid confrontation, perhaps trying to find peace elsewhere. Rosa continued, "Daniel talked about someone from his past, someone he felt he failed. He said he did not want to fail. Lily too, she reminded him of innocence that needed protection." Arthur felt a sharp sting. He wondered who Daniel believed he had failed. Rosa added, "Daniel said he wished he could talk to you. He wished he could tell you what he was doing, but he thought you were too busy, too disappointed, too far away." It broke Arthur inside because he realized Daniel had been right in many ways. Arthur had been distant, unreachable, lost in his world of business and success, while his son drifted farther and farther away. Rosa paused, coughing. Lily held her hand. Arthur handed her water. She took a sip and continued, "He tried to balance both worlds, helping us and trying to live up to your expectations, but it was heavy for him. He was always tired, always thinking, always worried. One day he told me that sometimes he felt like he was drowning in his responsibilities. He said he wished someone would notice But no one ever did. Arthur felt tears burn behind his eyes. He whispered, I should have seen, I should have been there. Rosa looked at him with tired eyes and said, you loved him in your way, but sometimes love needs to be spoken, shown, and Daniel never. Felt that from you? Not enough. Arthur looked down at his hands, guilt filling every corner of his heart. He wondered if his silence had been the wall that trapped Daniel inside his own pain. Lily leaned her head on her mother's arm, whispering, Mama. Uncle Daniel said good people never leave, even when they go away. Rosa smiled faintly, brushing Lily's hair. Arthur swallowed hard, turning toward the window. Where the sunlight barely reached the floor, he thought about Daniel, about the life he lived, the burdens he carried, the kindness he gave away, and the loneliness he hid. Arthur stepped out of the room for a moment, needing air, needing space to breathe. He walked down the corridor, feeling the weight of memories crashing into him. He remembered Daniel's laughter when he was a child, remembered how he used to run into Arthur's office, excited to show him drawings or stories. He remembered how that joy slowly faded, replaced by distance. Arthur had never asked why. He never listened closely enough. He leaned against the wall. He felt something shift inside him, a quiet resolve growing, a promise forming. He would not fail. Lily, he would not fail. Rosa, he would not fail. Daniel. Again he wiped his eyes, took a deep breath, and returned to the room. Lily looked at him with hope shining through fear. Rosa looked at him with trust, mixed with uncertainty. Arthur approached them and said softly, but firmly, from today, you are not alone. I will take care of both of you. I will honor what my son started. Lily blinked slowly, tears forming again, but this time they were not from fear. They were from the fragile hope returning to her tiny heart. Arthur sat beside them, feeling something he had not felt in years, a sense of purpose, a sense of connection, a sense of redemption beginning to bloom. But little did he know that the truth he sought was only beginning to unravel, and the secret Daniel left behind would shake him in ways he never imagined. The night settled around the hospital like a heavy blanket, and the world outside grew quiet while the lights inside continued to hum softly. Lily had fallen asleep in the chair beside her mother's bed, her small head resting against the blanket. Rosa watched her daughter with tired eyes, her breathing uneven but steady. Arthur sat on the other side of the room, his hands clasped together, his mind lost in thoughts that refused to settle. Every memory of Daniel, every argument, every quiet moment of distance echoed inside him like an ocean too loud to ignore. Now Rosa turned her head toward Arthur and said in a weak voice, you should go home. You have done enough. Arthur shook his head slowly, his voice calm but firm. I am not leaving you alone. Rosa tried to protest, but she lacked the strength. Her eyes softened with something close to gratitude, mixed with disbelief. She whispered, you are not the man I expected to see here at this hour. Arthur felt the words strike deeply. He answered quietly, neither am I. Silence stretched between them, warm and heavy. Rosa closed her eyes for a moment, and Arthur watched her weary face, seeing the cost of years of struggle hidden behind her gentle expression. He wondered how Daniel had felt every time he left this apartment, how heavy it must have been to carry their burden alone, how much courage it took to help without expecting anything in return, and how lonely he must have felt hiding everything from the father. He wanted to impress Arthur. Stood up and walked to the window, watching lights from the city flicker in the distance. He whispered more to himself than to Rosa. I wish I could ask him why he never told me. Rosa responded softly. Maybe he was protecting you as much as he was. Protecting us? Arthur turned to her, confused. Why would he protect me? Rosa smiled weakly. Because he loved you, and he knew your heart was not as cold as you acted. Sometimes people hide their pain to keep those they love from hurting even more. Arthur felt a deep ache inside him. Rosa closed her eyes again, trying to rest, and Arthur sat back down beside her. After a while, she opened her eyes again and said, there is something else, something I never told. Daniel did not want me to tell. He said he would tell you himself one day when he was ready, but he never got the chance. Now you deserve to, Arthur. leaned forward, his breath catching. He felt as if the room had suddenly shrunk. Rosa took a slow breath and whispered Daniel was helping us because he knew what it felt like to lose someone he could not save, someone named Amelia. The name hit Arthur like a storm. He had never heard it before. He whispered, "Who is Amelia?" Rosa closed her eyes, remembering. Daniel told me Amelia was someone he cared for deeply, someone he felt he failed. He said he could not protect her when she needed him, and her loss haunted him. Every day, he said, he saw her and Lily, not because they looked alike, but because Lily carried the same innocence that Amelia had, and he said he would never let another innocent soul suffer because of his mistakes. Arthur felt the ground shift beneath him. He had never known that Daniel carried such grief, never known that he had loved someone so deeply that her memory shaped all his choices. Arthur asked quietly, "What happened to her?" Rosa shook her head slowly. He never said. He only said, "She is gone," and he could never forgive himself. Arthur felt the weight of this unknown story pressing against him like a shadow he had ignored until it swallowed everything. Lily stirred in her sleep, her small hands slipping from her mother's blanket. Rosa reached for her, brushing her hair gently, her fingers trembling. Arthur watched them, both feeling a fierce protective instinct rising inside him. He stood up suddenly and said, "Rosa, I want you and Lily to come live with me at the mansion. I want you to have comfort, safety, and anything you need." Rosa stared at him in shock, shaking her head. "No, Mr. Montgomery, I cannot accept that. It is too much. People will talk. Your family, your business," Arthur interrupted gently. "None of that matters. What matters is that you and Lily are safe, and that I honor my son's kindness by continuing what he started." Rosa looked torn, her eyes filling with tears. She whispered, "Daniel would be proud." Arthur felt a sharp pain in his chest. Pride was something he rarely allowed himself to feel, but hearing that felt like a fragile gift before Rosa could respond further. The door opened and a nurse entered, asking Arthur to step outside for some documents. He nodded and followed her. When he returned, Rosa was sitting up slightly, her expression thoughtful as if she had been wrestling with a heavy decision. Lily was still sleeping, her small breaths soft as she curled up on the chair. Rosa looked at Arthur and said in a quiet, steady tone, "There is something else. I need to tell you something Daniel never knew, because I was afraid to break his heart, and I was afraid to break yours." To Arthur felt his heartbeat quicken. He stepped closer, his voice low. "Tell me." Rosa looked down at her hands, trembling slightly. She whispered, "Daniel was not just helping us out of kindness. He had another reason, a much deeper reason, one that he never knew, and you never knew." Arthur felt a chill run through him. Rosa lifted her eyes, meeting his gaze, and said, "Mr. Montgomery, Lily is not just the daughter of your former maid. She is connected to your son in a way you never imagined." She paused, taking a shaky breath, and whispered, "Lily is Daniel's daughter." The words struck Arthur like thunder. Everything stopped inside him, his breath, his thoughts. The room around him seemed to disappear. He stared at Rosa, unable to speak, unable to move, unable to understand the weight of what he had just heard. Rosa looked down, tears falling silently. She whispered, "I found out after I left the mansion. I was too ashamed to return. I was afraid of how you would react. I did not want to ruin Daniel's life, or yours. He never knew, because I thought keeping the secret would protect him." Arthur felt an overwhelming surge of emotions rising inside him. Shock, grief, regret, love, confusion, a storm tearing through him. Lily, Daniel's daughter, his granddaughter, standing at the grave of a father she never knew, while Arthur, the man who had everything, remained blind to the truth. Rosa covered her face, crying silently, whispering, "I am sorry. I am so sorry." Arthur stepped closer, his voice breaking. "Rosa, why did you never tell me? Why did you carry this alone?" Rosa whispered. "Because I thought you would reject her. I thought you would reject me. I thought he would lose everything." Arthur looked at Lily, sleeping peacefully, her small hand curled against her chest. Oblivious to the truth that had shattered the room, Arthur felt his knees weaken. He sat down slowly, staring at her with new eyes. His son's child, the last living piece of Daniel, the innocence he failed the family. He did not know he had the bloodline he almost lost forever. In that moment, Arthur Montgomery realized the truth. The world he built meant nothing compared to the third. Family he failed, the empire he created was hollow compared to the tiny heartbeat sleeping in this room, and the secret that had been buried for years now stood before him, asking him to choose redemption or repeat the mistakes of the past. He reached out and touched Lily's hair, gently whispering, "I will never fail you again. Not ever." Arthur stood in the quiet garden behind the mansion, the early morning light spreading across the sky like a slow awakening breath. The world felt softer, lighter, almost unfamiliar after the storm that had filled his life for so many years. He watched Lily chase a butterfly, her tiny feet tapping over the grass, her faded blue dress replaced now by a simple clean one bought just yesterday, with her eyes shining bright in a way he had not seen since the graveyard the first day they met. He had wondered many times how a man with everything could feel so empty, and how a child with nothing could fill the hollowness he carried for so long. And now, as he watched her smile, he understood something deep inside him, shifting like a heavy door, unlocking after years of being tightly sealed. Inside the mansion, Mrs. Hale prepared breakfast, her movements calmer now, her heart no longer clenched by fear. Arthur had made a promise that day, and he had kept it. No one would ever hurt Lily again. No one would speak to them with cruelty. No one would dismiss the sacrifice that Sarah made. The truth was now open like a dawn after a long, dark night. And Arthur was determined to live differently from this moment forward. Lily ran to him, her small wrist hands grabbing his sleeve, her eyes wide with excitement, saying she saw a flower that looked like a tiny star. Arthur followed her and crouched beside her, listening to her talk in a soft voice about shapes and colors and little things children notice that adults forget somewhere along the way, and his heart softened like warm clay, shaping itself into something he had lost long ago. Later that day, Arthur drove them to the place where his son Daniel used to spend time when he needed to breathe, a quiet lake surrounded by tall trees reaching to the sky. Lily sat beside him at the wooden dock, kicking her feet above the water, the breeze lifting her hair in soft waves, and Arthur began telling her stories about Daniel, not as a soldier, not as a fallen hero, but as a boy who laughed too loudly and drew silly sketches everywhere and left muddy shoes in every hallway. Lily listened with full attention, her eyes shining with curiosity and kindness. Then she placed her tiny hand on Arthur's wrist, a gesture that said more than words could ever express, a gesture of comfort, trust, and innocence. Arthur felt something inside him break and rebuild at the same time. A quiet healing spreading through him like warm sunlight. He had spent years grieving alone, years blaming himself for not knowing Daniel enough, for not being close enough, for not seeing his pain, and yet here beside him sat a child who had known Daniel in a different way, a way he had never imagined, and she was the bridge he never knew he needed. When they returned to the mansion, Arthur called his lawyers and made decisions that would shape the future in a way that honored both Daniel and Sarah. He arranged for Lily to be adopted legally and fully, so that her place in his life would be permanent, unshakable, unchallenged. He arranged a scholarship fund under Daniel's name for children who came from difficult homes. He reorganized his entire business empire, shifting focus toward helping families in need rather than expanding profits that had never filled his soul. The staff watched him change, not slowly but powerfully, a transformation unfolding openly, his voice softer, his steps more patient, his presence warmer, as though the mansion itself breathed differently now. No longer a house of silence, but one of healing. Mrs. Hale began to tell Lily bedtime stories, and Lily began to paint small pictures with bright colors, taping them to the walls, making the house feel alive again. Arthur kept one painting, the one she made of Daniel and herself standing together at the lake. He framed it and placed it on his bedside table where he could see it every night before sleep. Weeks passed, and Arthur found himself no longer visiting the grave. Out of guilt, but out of gratitude, standing beside the granite stone, he spoke to Daniel with a gentle heart, telling him how Lily was growing, how she laughed, how she brought joy to every room, how she had given him back a piece of himself, he thought. He had lost forever one day, as Arthur sat in his study. Lily climbed onto his lap, holding a small notebook tightly against her chest. She said she wanted to tell him something important, something she had been thinking about for many days. She opened the notebook, revealing drawings simple but full of meaning. The first drawing showed the grave where they had met. The second showed her holding Arthur's hand. The third showed all three of them, Daniel, Lily, Arthur, standing together under a sky full of stars. She pointed to the stars, explaining that Daniel was one of them, always watching, always guiding, always sending love down to them. Arthur felt his throat tighten, not from pain this time, but from something deeper, a peace he had never known. He hugged her gently, resting his cheek on her hair, letting the moment fill every empty corner of his heart. Life settled into a rhythm, soft, steady, warm. Lily went to school and came home with stories about her day. Arthur attended her parent meetings, sat in the tiny chairs meant for children, shook teachers' hands, and listened with pride as they spoke about her kindness, her intelligence, her gentle way with others. He realized then that he had been given a second chance, not to rewrite the past, but to honor it through love, through care, through the life he built with this child who arrived in tears at a grave and unknowingly healed the man who stood beside her. Years later, when Lily grew older, she would look back at that day in the cemetery, not with fear, but with understanding, because that day she had not only cried for Daniel, she had unknowingly opened Arthur's heart and changed the course of her own life forever. And Arthur Montgomery, the billionaire who once believed his world was made of steel and stone, learned that the strongest things in life were not money, nor power, nor empire, but the delicate threads of love, connection, and redemption woven by the hands of a little girl who stood crying at a grave and turned loss into family darkness, into dawn silence, into a new beginning. This was not the ending. This was the beginning of the life they chose together. A life built not on regret, but on the quiet, unwavering truth that love heals everything, even the wounds we carry in silence, even the wounds we hide from ourselves. Arthur looked at the sky one last time before closing his eyes in the garden sunshine, and whispered that he finally understood what Daniel had left behind: a legacy not of war, but of love. A legacy carried now by Lily, his daughter, his light, his second chance.